I did my presentation on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And to start the presentation, I'm going to show a short clip on Martin Luther King.
When things look out of control, isn't it time for you to take control? You know, to maybe create something that's only...
I have the pleasure to present to you, sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination, 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal.
In this presentation, I will analyze how Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was one of the most influential leaders in American history. Used Aristotle's persuasive appeals, logos, ethos, and pathos to communicate his vision and mobilize a movement. From civil rights marches to his powerful public speeches, King's use of these rhetorical strategies played a critical role in shaping social change. The insights I'm sharing with you today come from the knowledge I've gained in the Effective Leadership Communication course, where we studied how rhetorical principles can empower leaders to influence, unite, and inspire. This course provided the foundation for my analysis and helped me understand why certain messages stick with us and others fade away. So here's what to expect. First, I'll break down how King used logos, appealing to logic and reason through facts and references to America's founding documents. Then I'll move into ethos, where I'll show how he built trust and credibility through his role as a moral and spiritual leader. Finally, we'll explore pathos, or emotional appeal, arguably King's most powerful tool, where he stirred hope, empathy, and conviction in the hearts of millions. By the end of this presentation, I hope you'll see how deeply impactful communication isn't just about what you say. It's about how you say it and who you are when you say it. Now let's begin with the first rhetorical appeal. Logos, which refers to logical reasoning and the use of facts, data, and sound argument to persuade an audience. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. consistently used logos in his speeches and writings to make powerful, reason-based arguments in favor of civil rights and equality. Rather than appealing only to emotion, King often rooted his rhetoric in historical and legal foundations, building a case that would stand up not just morally, but intellectually and constitutionally as well. One of the most powerful examples of this is his letter from Birmingham jail. In it, King justifies civil disobedience by referencing the U.S. Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and rulings from the Supreme Court. He argues that unjust laws are not only immoral, but also inconsistent with the values that America claims to uphold. This deliberate use of legal logic helped convince both his supporters and critics that his movement was grounded in truth and justice. Another great example appears in his iconic "I Have a Dream" speech. He refers to the Declaration of Independence as a promissory note that America has defaulted on when it comes to African Americans. By framing this promise in economic and contractual terms, he presents a compelling argument that equality is not just an ideal, it's an obligation. His logical framing challenges the audience to recognize this injustice in rational, undeniable terms. Through logos, King wasn't just moving hearts, he was building a legal and moral framework that made it difficult to argue against civil rights without appearing unjust or irrational. Next, let's look at ethos, the appeal to a speaker's character, credibility, and ethical values. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s ethos was one of his strongest communication tools. His credibility didn't just come from what he said, it came from who he was and how he lived his values. As a Baptist minister, he was already seen as a moral leader, but his actions consistently reinforced that image. He practiced what he preached: nonviolence, justice, and compassion, which made his words even more powerful. In his letter from Birmingham jail, King begins by introducing himself as the president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. By doing this, he connects himself to a well-respected organization rooted in peace and justice. He doesn't just speak as an individual, he speaks as a representative of a larger moral movement. Another great example of ethos is in his Nobel Peace Prize acceptance speech. In it, King expresses deep humility, saying he accepts the award not as a personal victory, but on behalf of a movement striving for human dignity. His focus on peace over pride and humility over ego solidifies his moral leadership. King's many arrests and public sacrifices also added to his credibility. He didn't just advocate for justice from the sidelines. He risked his safety, his freedom, and ultimately his life to live out the values he preached. That kind of courage builds deep trust with an audience, making his ethos hard to question. Through his unwavering character and consistent actions, King became a trusted voice, not just for civil rights, but for humanity. Lastly, let's look at pathos, which is all about appealing to the audience's emotions through vivid language, personal stories, and shared values. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a master of pathos. His speeches stirred deep emotional responses, feelings of hope, empathy, unity, and conviction. Unlike logic or authority alone, emotional appeal allowed King to connect with people's hearts, moving them to reflect, to care, and ultimately to act. One of the most powerful examples of this is his I Have a Dream speech in it. In it, he paints an unforgettable picture of children of all races joining hands, a symbol of future unity and racial harmony. That single image captured the hopes of millions and inspired generations. His use of repetition, such as the phrase, I have a dream, builds emotional momentum and drives his vision deep into the hearts of his listeners. King also used emotion to encourage personal reflection. He didn't just want people to believe in change, he wanted them to feel the weight of injustice and the urgency of action. Through stories and imagery, he created a shared emotional experience that united people across racial and social lines. In his sermon, The Drum Major Instinct, King speaks about the human desire to be remembered, not for wealth or power, but for serving others with love. He shifts the focus from ego to humility, from fame to legacy, and in doing so, he connects deeply with universal human values. Through pathos, King made the civil rights struggle not just a political issue, but a moral and emotional one that everyone could feel responsible for. As we come to the end of this presentation, I'd like to take a moment to reflect on everything we've covered and why it truly matters. Not just in the context of leadership communication, but in how we understand influence, character, and legacy. Throughout the analysis, I have examined the powerful leadership of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. through the lens of Aristotle's 3 rhetorical appeals: logos, ethos, and pathos. These appeals, logic, credibility, and emotion, are not just theoretical tools from ancient philosophy. They remain essential strategies for impactful communication. We begin with logos, the appeal to logic and reason. We saw how Dr. King used facts historical references, and legal arguments to make a rational case for civil rights. In speeches like Letter from Birmingham Jail and I Have a Dream, he pointed to the U.S. Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, not just as documents, but as promises that had not been yet fulfilled. His words challenged America to live up to its own ideals. Through Logos, he built arguments that were not only persuasive, but intellectually sound, ones that could stand against criticism and withstand time. Then we moved into ethos, the appeal to character and credibility. Dr. King did not ask others to do what he himself was not willing to do. His credibility came from who he was, a minister, a man of faith, a man committed to peace. He willingly faced arrests, threats, and even the risk of death, not for personal gain, but for the greater good. In Letter from Birmingham Jail and his Nobel Peace Prize acceptance speech, he emphasized moral courage, humility, and a deep sense of responsibility. His ethical leadership built trust not only with his followers, but also with people around the world. Lastly, we looked at pathos, the emotional appeal, and this may be where King's communication was most profound. His ability to move people's hearts with powerful imagery, repetition, and stories helped ignite change. In I Have a Dream, he spoke of children of all races joining hands, and in The Drum Major Instinct, he reflected on the meaning of life, service, and legacy. His speeches connected with universal human emotions, hope, sadness, anger, love, and allowed people from all walks of life to see themselves in his vision. As I mentioned at the beginning, we saw a video clip of Dr. King delivering one of his most famous speeches. That clip served as a reminder that his power wasn't just in what he said, but in how he said it. His tone, his presence, his words all aligned to create something unforgettable. That is the essence of leadership communication. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. remains one of the most influential figures in modern history, not just because of what he accomplished, but because of how he communicated. He showed us that persuasion rooted in truth, ethics, and empathy can lead people towards transformational change. His speeches are all still studied, quoted, and felt because they were built on a foundation of deep purpose, clarity, and conviction. In closing, I hope this presentation has shown that great leadership isn't just about having a message. It's about delivering it with honesty, strength, and heart. Whether we are leading a movement or simply trying to make a positive difference in our own communities, we can all learn something from how Dr. King used words to shape history. And that is my presentation. Thank you.